I want to ask the Minister that he might, I know he's been talking to Deputy Brown there about Rossport, or about Rosslare, I should say. If he could give us some details on the recruitment of customs clearance and customs officials. All of these businesses will have to be revived in the context even of a difficult Brexit. I think we're all still hopeful. There may not be a hard Brexit. We won't know for a couple of months. But there seems to have been relatively little recruitment overall of customs officials. Perhaps the Minister could tell us.
So when the UK leaves the European Union, it becomes a third country from a customs perspective, and the free circulation and free movement of goods between the EU and UK will end. This will increase substantially the number of businesses who will have to complete customs formalities and other related obligations for trade with the UK and then through the UK land bridge to the EU. This will present a significant challenge for many of those businesses who up to now have not had any experience of third country trade and customs formalities. I'm advised by Revenue that a priority for them is to facilitate the efficient movement of legitimate trade in the new trading environment. They've undertaken an extensive trader programme and have written to all businesses who trade with the UK, highlighting the Brexit-related revenue supports available to them and inviting them to a series of Brexit seminars where they outlined customs procedures and the steps that businesses should be taking to prepare for Brexit. Their focus to date has been on East-West trade with the UK. As the Deputy will know, the Government has made it clear that it's committed to avoiding the return of a hard border on the island of Ireland. In the event of no deal, there will be intensive discussions between the Government, the EU and EU partners regarding the customs formalities necessary for the movement of goods north to south. In relation to VAT, under existing rules, when the UK becomes a third country, VAT on import will be chargeable at the point of importation unless the importer is approved to use the current deferred payment system, which allows approved traders to defer payment of certain charges, including customs and VAT at import, until the 15th of the month following importation. I have included a measure in the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union Bill of 2019 to allow for postponed accounting for import VAT. This is being introduced in order to alleviate the immediate cash flow burden for Irish traders arising from Brexit. Under this system, importers will not pay import VAT at the point of entry, but will instead account for import VAT through their bi-monthly VAT return.
Mr. Deputy Burton.
Thank you. Figures that were released there last week by the Revenue Commissioners show that only 117 customs officers have been hired as part of the 3,000-person recruitment campaign. Now, I simply don't understand that low volume, because if you take the different ports, airports and so on that we're all aware of, not to mention towns at or near the border, 117 people would barely fill a one-day shift cycle at one large port or border town. And I know, for instance, in relation to Dundalk, that the old premises and locations for customs seem to be pretty much at the moment totally refurbished. The Minister might confirm that. That's what everybody who's looked at it believes, and everyone's been told that's in the context of the changes that may happen post-Brexit.
Thank you, Deputy.
So, can you comment, Minister?
Thank you, Deputy. The commitments that I gave in relation to figures of additional staff for the Revenue Commissioner was that there would be an additional 400 staff recruited by the end of this March. We will deliver that. And then what I have said is there will then be a further 200 that will need to be recruited, and in turn we will deliver that too. The 3,000 figure that the Deputy is referring to there might well be the number of people who actually applied for these roles, because it's fair to say that there was actually a very high level of interest in this work, and we have been able to build up quite a large panel of potential employees to do this work. In relation to what the Deputy has said there about the border, about border towns in particular, we are not planning to have staff in place to be able to facilitate the development of infrastructure on the border. And in relation to what you said there about ports, it's worthwhile bearing in mind that, for example, for Rosslare Port, with the additional staff that we are talking about recruiting there, it's a very, very significant increase in the number of staff that they would have available.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Burton.
I'm conscious of the fact that we're recreating a whole customs clearance industry, and that particularly new arrangements are being established which will be utilising technology. Nonetheless, at each point, which is a service point, let's call it, in relation to border-based transactions of crossing to or from the United Kingdom, there is going to have to be some kind of oversight, preferably, we all know, electronically, but there will also have to be a physical presence in terms of people available if inspection is required. We also have the same situation particularly required in relation to people like veterinary inspectors. So what I'm saying, Minister, is in the debate, for instance, on the bill, there's been very little information from government, perhaps because you yourself haven't been taking part in the debate, and you have been quite forthcoming this morning. But businesses along the border are desperately worried. We had the head of Dublin Port showing their new booths the other night on TV, but no one along the border knows what's going to happen. People are guessing.
We are not planning to have the kind of infrastructure in place that we will have in Dublin Port at or near the border. It's the very point that we are looking to avoid at the moment. And then in relation to recruitment, the resources that the Revenue Commissioner have looked for in relation to having the right level of resource in place to deal with the new customs procedures that have to put in place, I've made available to them. I actually gave an overview in relation to the different sections of the bill that I am responsible for on Tuesday evening. Deputy, as I said, a committee with your good self and with other deputies there a number of weeks ago, if the Revenue Commissioner do need additional resources beyond what I have made available to them, then I'm very willing to engage with them on that, because the point you made is true. This is the recreation of a very, very significant amount of new activity, and in particular the work of customs agents is going to be really important across the coming period.
Thank you,
it's
Minister.
the kind of work that hasn't happened in our economy in this scale for decades.